when we have our mindset on something and we start to visualize what it's going to be like, what it's going to feel like, our Facebook profile is the picture and the logo of the event that we're training for. We make it who we are, for the good and the bad. And then when that's taken away, what happens and what's left is that we start to question, well, what do I even have? And I'm not saying that these races aren't important, because they're super important. Yeah, can you be bummed out because you're excited to get out there and rip it? Yeah, absolutely. I get it. Be upset, be disappointed, or be frustrated. Sure, but to be devastated and to be like to not know what to do is, I think, to alert yourself to, okay, maybe my boundaries with what this race is going to actually do for me are disproportionate to reality.
And we're rolling, buddy.
And we're live. Welcome aboard. Hey, it's Thursday, March 12th, 2020. And welcome to the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 355. Three double nickel.
Three double nickel.
That was my football number in high school. And
355?
No, well, yeah, 355. You could tell I didn't make the field much. No, 55, man, I was a lineman. Our double nickel, the old double nickel. But hey, welcome aboard. We appreciate you tuning in to our podcast. We come to you twice a week, pretty much Mondays and Thursdays. But occasionally, when life happens, we come to you on other days. But it's always been twice a week for the last 3 years. We've had, like a couple days ago, we had our record day for the cast. So we know we've had either a lot of new listeners, or there's 3 of you and you've gone and you've listened to all 354 previous podcasts in the last 24 hours. Whichever scenario that may be, hey, we are appreciative of you taking the time to listen. We cover all things triathlon and life, which would be a lot of our podcasts today. Training, races, race previews, race recaps. We have on race directors. Sometimes we have on other guests. But we do our best to just have an open, honest conversation about what's going on in our own lives, what's going on in our athletes' lives, as both Mike and our coaches and athletes ourselves. And then a lot of times we try to take the pulse of the triathlon community, or most oftentimes the pulse of our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group on Facebook. It's an outstanding community full of welcoming and very intelligent, experienced athletes that are always willing to help chip in and chime in with any tips, comments, and help you kind of work your way through and navigate what is oftentimes a hard sport, to figure out, a hard sport to find sometimes your ultimate success in. And I think that has to do with the complexity of having 3 sports that go into one. And then I also think it's hard, being the fact that we come to this sport usually later on in life, when our life is already kind of taken on a shape with other responsibilities, with if you're married, you have your profession or your kids. So life is already pulling at you a million different ways, and now you're going to add in a sport that's going to take on 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours, maybe more of your time, and you have to navigate through all that and try to manage the stress and the performance. And so we do our best to open up that can, let you take a whiff, and then take it from there.
Yeah, that was a nice way to put it. This is a bit of a foreshadowing, in a sense, that I am in.
You are, yeah, it is a foreshadowing. Go ahead.
Well, I'm in Chattanooga, and I'm actually at a hotel, and soon we'll be in Chattanooga doing these together all the time. I have been in Nashville, and you've been in Chattanooga for a while now, and I am actually staying at the hotel where we have typically stayed for Ironman Chattanooga 70.3 and the full.
Yeah, and it's our host hotel. Holiday Inn Chestnut.
It is. I got up early this morning and went down to the lobby, and when I stepped into that little, how the elevator area.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. ATM on the right, little hallway. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I had a weird sensation, like I was going down to the race.
I know, right?
It's weird, man. It's like
it's great.
Symbolism of sorts, where I just that's not symbolism, but you know what I'm saying. It's
I know.
And then I got on the elevator, and there was a nice old couple on there, and I looked in their eyes, and that poor lady ended up coughing halfway down the elevator. She goes, "I swear I'm not sick. It's just me. It's just me." And I was like, it's all good. You know?
It was funny. I said that to Allie this morning. I was like, you tell your loved ones, I love you just the way you are, until they cough, and you're like, get the hell out of here. Like I got
Yeah.
nothing to do with you. But no, I think something that's funny. It's like the Holiday Inn that we always stay at for our races right there on Chestnut. Hayden like loves it. We drive by the hotel almost daily now because his daycare is at the Y, which is like right across the street. You can see it from the parking lot. And he's like, man, I really love that hotel. He's like, can we go back to the hotel? I'm like, why do you want to go back to the hotel? He's like, I just like it. I like the hotel. I'm like, well, we're not going back there.
Mm-hmm.
Might go back to visit for Chat 70.3, but
But it
yeah,
was weird, man. That feeling, like that pre-race feeling I had, and it was
you're
just came out of nowhere, and I'm like, boy, am I glad I'm not racing today.
yeah, today, yeah,
How out of shape I am,
you're
just in
waiting
general.
for somebody to like grab the elevator door, and you can hear the click clack of bike shoes through the tiled lobby, and people wobbling their tri bike and trying to perfectly Jenga move it into the elevator without getting like a single dent on it or a single like we definitely can't chip this bike or even scratch it, and it definitely can't touch any part of the elevator because then it might skirt my race. And in fact, when I was taking my bike and walking it to transition, I have to pick it up and walk it over streets because it might pick up gravel, the same streets that it's about to ride on for 56 miles the next day. Like that's one of my favorite things is watching athletes pick up their bikes and carry it over any part of street or road. I'm like, you do realize that you're expecting this same bike to hold up when you're riding on it at 16 to 25, 30 miles an hour on road with you on it. But let's definitely make sure we pick it up because God forbid these tires, they might pick up a piece of gravel, and who knows what could happen. But yeah, it's hey, we're getting close to race season. We got races this weekend, and we don't have races this weekend. That was kind of the little teaser I threw in the Facebook group yesterday about what to do when race plans changed. And I'm kind of going a different direction to start. I think it's just a great topic to have for every time of year. I think we're now getting into like the main meat of the season where the calendar. This is like the first weekend where I posted like our racing roster and our closed Facebook group for active athletes about people racing this weekend. And it was like the first like really full like complex weekend of people doing Olympics, people doing 70.3s, people doing half marathons, 5Ks, trail race, you name it, we're doing them. And it was like, the season is here. And so I think it's a great topic just because race plans always change. Like, and the fact of the matter is that it's not so much that race plans change, it's that that happens because life changes. And for the past, I don't know, 3 months, I've been preparing for this 50-mile trail race. I've spoken about it just a little bit, I think, on the podcast, but it was going to be here at the end of March 28th and 29th, or 28th or 29th, I think. My first one, I've never done a 50-mile. I've done 50Ks. I've been in kind of the meat of my training. I did my longest training run last week, a little over 24 miles on the trails here in Chattanooga, and that capped off what was like I think it was 8 days and 75 miles of running. So this was last Friday. And so I was feeling pretty fatigued, but now I was kind of knowing that taper was about to happen. I'm starting shedding some fatigue, and then really excited about this event. It's a fairly popular 50-mile race in Alabama, and then the next week was going to be our Clearmont camp, and I've just been excited for it. Like more excited about the opportunity to test myself in the environment than getting a medal or any kind of prestige or anything like that. It was just like I'm looking forward to expressing my fitness and seeing how things have gone and just applying myself to a specific challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And then over the course of the last like 48 hours, 72 hours, Allie and I were talking as like I said, we have our Clearmont camp, which is basically the next week after this 15 miler. And Allie and Hayden were supposed to come with me. We're kind of make a little mini vacation out of it on the front end. And then she was like, I just think with us going to Ironman Texas at the end of the month, it's probably just gonna be too much travel for Hayden, and I can keep him here and get things done. And I was like, what? I think it's a great idea. Like, plans sound great, in theory, like, oh, let's come. And then you think as time gets closer and you kind of see what life is dictating. And, when you have a toddler, every 3 seconds is different. And so you really
Yeah.
can't plan. I mean, as you
I
saw.
saw that last
You
night.
saw that last night at dinner, and so it's also the reason you're probably in the hotel. And so as we get closer to time, we start to kind of realize that even though we had these plans, even though we had these agendas, and these things sounded really great, she was like, "I don't think we're going to come." And I said, "I actually think that's a great idea. As long as you're okay with not coming and single parenting for 5 days, I agree with you." And then my next thought was, all right, well, that puts me away from Allie and Hayden for like 9 to 10 days. I would have basically left on a Friday night to stay in a cabin, raced a 50-miler on Saturday, slept in that same cabin Saturday night, and then woke up and drove home Sunday, and then turned around 24 hours later and left for Claremont to get ready for camp, and then not been back for the next Monday. And my first thought was, I can't imagine how much I'm going to owe her for single parenting for 10 days, and that's going to be like something I'm not sure I can stomach. But the real first thought I had was, I don't want to be away from them that long. Like I
Hmm.
don't I love my family. I love Allie. I love Hayden. I love spending time with them. Like I'm a family guy. And I like that, and I just don't want to be away from them for that period of time. And so I was like, all right, well, now I got to adjust like quickly. So I hopped on Ultra Sign Up, which is the main website for ultra marathons and anything kind of running and trail running. And did like a quick like mass search of like anything that was going to be a 50K up to like maybe even like a 60 miler within 250 300-mile radius. And I just picked the month of March, like just do it this month. And the only thing I was able to find was an 8-hour race, which is an 8-hour trail race. You basically get 8 hours to cover as many miles as you possibly can. So it's not an official like distance race. It's just, hey, let's see how much you can do in a period of time, which I think is also interesting and presents its own kind of challenges in terms of how you want to pace and strategize the whole thing. If you want to start out fast and see how many miles you can get in before you just totally like blow up and then just make it work the rest of the time, or do you want to pace it and try to even it out? But so I looked at it, I was like, all right, that's close. That's close to Atlanta, which is where we're in Chattanooga, so it's like a 2-hour drive away. And then I've got athletes there. I could probably stay at somebody's house. And then the only downside was that it's in 2 days. It's literally in 48 hours. And so my first thought was, oh well, I'm still going to be really really tired. I'm just not going to be able to perform the way I want to. But it makes the most sense. And am I going to be able to quote unquote maybe perform as well as I wanted to with fresh legs? No, because I was coming off my biggest week and I really didn't. Just started tapering yesterday when I made this decision. But it was the bonuses are, I still get to go challenge myself. I still get to figure out what my fitness is like. I get to practice fueling. I get to practice pacing. I get to get out there and just have fun. And then I get to relieve this other part of stress of being away from Allie and Hayden and having that stress build up. So I was weighing my options. It was a no-brainer. Like, is it going to be the ideal situation? It's a really really small event. Like the total opposite of what this other 50 miler is going to be, but it still allows me the opportunity to get close enough to doing what I wanted to do, which was ultimately challenge myself. Like, I think we get wrapped up sometimes, and I get it because every race has titles and distances and branding that tells us it's different. Tells it's different from this, it's different from that, it's got a different brand, it's got a different distance. So I respect that, and I honestly and obviously understand that, having been in the sport for so long and done so many races. But the ultimate reason I think, well, a lot of us get into this is to challenge ourselves, and then I think we kind of get wrapped up in that process sometimes with the specific prestige or how much we invest in a title, that we forget about opportunities. And for me, this was like, hey, this is the exact same opportunity I'm given. Will I be able to cover 50 miles in 8 hours? Most definitely not. I imagine I'll probably get in the low 40s, maybe. But I get to get out there and do what I can, and I get to learn. And I think that when there's a lot of athletes right now having races getting canceled, or their season kind of in flux. I just think it's important to remember and maybe even question if we're devastated, or if we think it's like the worst thing in the world. Like, why do we think that? Like, and in the past, I'll be honest, I would have been like, I have to race this. Like, screw that. Like, I'm going to race it. I've had my mindset on this specific race. Like, I've invested in just this race, and if I don't do this race, I don't know what I'm going to do. But that thought process and that I don't want to say misplaced investment, but the attachment that we have, I think a lot of times really shines a light on our real true why behind why we're doing something. And if a race cancellation or a race postponement or race move causes you some like enormous amount of being upset or sadness or discouragement, I get the missing of an opportunity, but it's just that opportunity. It's not the opportunity. We always have an opportunity. We always have an opportunity to find races, small, big, whatever, months down the line. So I think it's a great conversation, especially given the fact that some people are having races canceled right now, and just the importance of being flexible and looking for challenges and opportunities. And because they present themselves daily, like no matter what we're doing within training, within life, we always have opportunities to be successful. We always have opportunities to be flexible because life is always going to throw us curveballs. It's always going to throw us obstacles. It's always going to, take our plans and be like, you know what, we're actually going to do this, and then you have to adapt. And the athletes that are able to adapt and be flexible, and the athletes who just frankly love being in a process that is getting up every day and doing their best are not going to be as adversely affected if there is a race move. And we'll get to more on this down the line, but I just thought it was a personal example I was given. It's obviously a very different example and circumstance that a lot of other athletes are probably going through right now with some either race postponements or race cancellations, but there's always opportunities. And I think it's important that we search those out and understand and realize that it's about the challenge, and we can challenge ourselves in any way we want to, just like life can throw us, obstacles and curveballs anytime it wants to.
Yeah, man. That's heavy. Like it really like does strip it down to the core, right?
Hmm.
Because then you have to really step back, and as you know, we were kind of hanging out yesterday, and I was going through all, for me, it isn't a race right now, and I know there's a lot of like, just unknowns out there, and as I kept seeing everything in the world seemingly get canceled, yesterday, and
Hmm.
especially, and this is I think my personal example on this right now that's most relevant is the whole thing about, because yeah, my big thing is basketball and March Madness and all that. And now we're hearing that, they're going to not have fans at the games, and I personally think they're going to probably just end up wiping the whole thing away, at least postponing it. And I don't know what's going to happen, but it kind of it's something that you look forward to, and I certainly look forward to it. I mean, as far as like growing up in sports and a sports fan, and this is a big deal for me emotionally, kind of, because it's one of the things that I really look forward to. And I start thinking about, wow, how do you feel if you're a senior on a team that finally qualified to get into the tournament or something like that? It's your only shot to play in March Madness, and now you might not be able to. So, what
Hmm.
you're going through is, sort of a microcosm of that. I mean, obviously, you have other opportunities to challenge yourself and see what you're all about, and these, kids won't have a shot ever, maybe, to play in something like
Maybe.
this.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
maybe.
we don't know, and that's the other thing is like, oh, dude, you when this kind of thing happens, it's almost like you have to start watching news or paying attention to it a little bit. And it reminded me
Yeah,
of
I
how,
hate it, man. It's like our
oh,
society is become more isolated and more obsessed with their phones than ever, which is the worst thing for people's health, period.
yeah, I mean, that's really the point, I think, is that it's a weird one, man. It's like you just feel like all this stuff is moving things in the direction that we probably ultimately don't want to go, but we're going to be more and more isolated, more and more this, all these problems. And like, I wonder, it's the thing that kind of frightens me is that, like, when stuff gets in your head, you know, I'm sure people are feeling sick, and they're not even sick, and those are the kind of things that really, because I just like to look at things in a different way. Like, we're powerful and we have strength, and the more our minds get kind of flushed with media outcries, and I worked in the, as you know, we've talked about it. I worked in media for so long that I know that they glam onto this stuff, and they are so excited to put out bad news because it makes their job easier. It makes them seem more important, the whole nine yards, and you rarely it's very rare, I think, to see, rational opinions. Sometimes they're just really quick to layer it on. And I caution everybody to try and be balanced right now with that kind of stuff. But anyway, so but I text, like I told you, I've been going to these meditation groups, and I I texted my buddy. I said, man, it's really bummed me out with the March Madness. It's going to be canceled. And he said, I'm kind of good. I'm kind of good right now, actually. It might be a good opportunity to refocus on what's important. And back to what you were saying earlier, I think that's a healthy way to approach it. It's like, it's not always shiny objects and what's in front of us. It's kind of the long term, and it's a good chance to sort of reflect on, like you're saying, spending time with your family or being with good friends, and not worrying about the medals so much, or the short term, like, things that you feel like are going to validate you, because they're not.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people have races, coming up, and they've probably been working and thinking about them all the time, but it's definitely going to be hard to adjust and recalibrate your brain if it doesn't happen or something like that. But things are going to be all right. Um, it's just something that kind of is sort of like it feels like a little bit of a correction or something on some level, without going too deep into that. But
Yeah, I mean, listen, like we all have. I think there's a lot of great lessons, and I mean, one of my favorite books, is like the obstacle is the way. Like whatever way is the obstacle, that becomes the way. Like you just go. And there's one of my favorite quotes from that book, and is the path of least resistance is a terrible teacher. And I think that we always look for opportunities. I remember, like, obviously this is my situation is different in terms of adjusting to race, but I remember when I had just gotten out of treatment. This is, this is over 6 years ago, and almost this time of year in May, and I just got, I was getting my feet wet, and I was looking to do my very, very first triathlon as sober, and coming from being in a better place. And Al and I drove down to the Gulf Coast to do this sprint distance try, and I was super excited just to get in and, like, just to be back in part of it. And the morning of, swim was canceled. And my first thought was, gosh, like, I really wanted to, like, to do the whole thing, and I really wanted to be a part of it. And obviously swimming isn't my strength, and it's like where I feel the most home. I have like this kind of odd connection, I think, with water. And then I remember thinking, but dude, I'm here. Like, and I think in times like these, when life rears its ugly head and we start to bemoan chances and opportunities, what we fail to do is remember all the ones that we've absolutely utterly wasted, where we've woken up and been lazy, where we haven't taken our priorities seriously, where we sloughed off, where we didn't stay focused, and where we just kind of, did things that we wanted to, when the reality is this: every day is an opportunity to be successful. And we have these events and we have these things scheduled, and they're all down the line. But first of all, they're not going to make or break who you are. It's a race. Like, I know that people have a whole lot of different, feelings and thoughts about race, and the investment they put in it is large, and like, that's the return you get. And I understand that people get upset about it, but the fact of the matter is that, like, as long as you're still here and you have opportunities, like, you can do things, like, you can find ways to challenge yourself. And I hate the fact that it takes circumstances like this for us to, like, worry about our health, all of a sudden. And it's like, and all of a sudden, like, oh, we got to seize the day. I'm like, well, every day is an opportunity to, like, be healthy, treat your body with respect, challenge yourself, do these things, get after it. So what if a race gets moved? Adjust. And I get that it's probably difficult. And no, I don't, not probably, it is difficult, because I've had to rearrange. As a coach, you can imagine, like, how many different athletes I've got that are going through different emotions of, like, should I even train for this race anymore because it's probably going to be canceled? Like, we have athletes a ton. Ironman Texas is a team race. We got athletes doing the Boston Marathon. We got athletes doing Oceanside, and Texas at any point. They're all within, like, the next 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. We have an athlete doing Puerto Rico 7.3, and that race is on. And so you have athletes going through all these emotions. So I understand that, I get it. And I totally get that if you're a self-coached athlete, you're working off a training plan, you've made an investment, and you've trained, and then all of a sudden things change, and now you kind of feel screwed. Because now you're like, well, I've been on a course, I've done this 12, 16, 20-week plan, but now it's gone. Now, what do I do now? Do I defer? If I do defer, how do I readjust things? And that's obviously one of those things where it's super beneficial right now. I would have to imagine to have a coach that can say, hey, we like had an athlete who had a half marathon canceled this next weekend. He was like, but I found one that's going to be held the week after. Let's adjust. Cool. Let's make an adjustment. Let's do it. It's so while it's frustrating, I think because when we have our mindset on something and we start to visualize what it's going to be like, what it's going to feel like, our Facebook profile is the picture and the logo of the event that we're training for. We make it who we are, for the good and the bad. And then when that's taken away, what happens and what's left is that we start to question, well, what do I even have? If I've put so much into one event, what does that say about the return that it's going to give me? And I'm not saying that these races aren't important, because they're super important. And I've completed a ton of races that they all mean something different to me. But I think one of the healthier things we can always do is think, all right, well, if I'm so attached to this one race and my feelings and emotions have gone a total different direction, yeah, you be bummed out because you were excited to get out there and rip it. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. Be upset, be disappointed or be frustrated, sure. But to be devastated and to be like to not know what to do is I think to alert yourself to, okay, maybe my boundaries with what this race is going to actually do for me are disproportionate to reality. And the fact that it's just an event. It's just a race. And that's probably how you've approached your training in a way. And yeah, there are going to be people, well, this is going to be my first one. Well, then get out and do another one. Like you're going to think of it this way, you're going to be more fit and in better shape to do the next one if something even happens. Like we loved triathletes love to plan. They love to be the type, they love to try to feel like they can control everything. And they have to have a plan. If that plan gets tweaked just a little bit, it's like chaos ensues and upset and meltdowns. They just like happen and roll. But you got to be able to be flexible. You got to be able to adjust, and you have to remember what's most important. Like, was I disappointed that this 50-mile wasn't going to do? Sure, I was disappointed. But for me, the net positive and the net gain was I still get to get something close. I get to put my family in a better position, and I get to put myself in a better position in terms of limiting my stress, which would be being away from my family for 10 days. That's a huge win. And so you have to balance those things out and see, like, all right, well, if I had found myself being like, I don't know, babe, like this race is really important to me, then frankly, should have been like, well, you're an idiot. Get your shit together. But I could have looked in the mirror and been like, all right, why? Okay, why is this one so important to me? And I know this because I work with athletes that are like this, and I've been like this in the past, that every race to us has a different meaning. Every race to us has a different, symbol. It has a different, it elicits a different response. You could be going through like a really, really, really hard time right now with life, with your professional, life, your personal life, whatever it is, and you feel like you just need it. Like I have to have this Ironman to look forward to. And we talked about this in one of our, I think, our most popular podcasts was like, what happens after Ironman, the Ironman depression, is that once you put that much into it and that much stock in something that's not going to give you that much of a return, then the downside and the fall is so much greater than the rise. That you have to be even keeled, that you have to be steady, that you have to be a person who loves to be a part of a process that goes out and executes things day to day and gets outside and does the things that they can do and not obsesses about the things that they can't do. Like we live in a society where people just want to wallow and complain and whine about, oh, I can't do this or now I can't do that. It's like, well, tell me what you can do, because that's really all that matters. Doing the things that you can do, and bemoaning about the things that you can't or the opportunities you're going to miss is the fact that you're just missing one. You're not missing them all. You're missing one opportunity. And the truth is, if you really want to find another one, you can probably find another one. You can probably find another opportunity. It may look different, right? It might look totally different than the previous opportunity, but it's the challenge. That's why we do these things. We look to challenge ourselves. We look to challenge what we know, how we act, the way we feel, how we can perform, our execution, our effort, see where our fitness is. Like we do these things, we sign up for these races, hopefully to challenge ourselves to become someone and something different than we were before. But guess what? That happens during training. That doesn't happen on race day. We used this analogy in one of our very first conversations we ever had on this podcast is Ironman training is very much like graduation. You train, it's the 4 years of your undergrad, then on Ironman is basically the day you walk across the stage and get your diploma. So if you're doing your undergrad and you do all these things, you become this person, you learn all this stuff, you figure out your role in life, and you become more responsible, and you become more intelligent, you become, a different person, your character increases, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, hey, I got sick and I can't show up for your graduation. Does it take you away the last 4 years? No. It doesn't take away who you are. It just takes away the day. And I think we just have a disproportionate investment into what we believe a race is going to do for us, because frankly that's irresponsible to put that much onus on to race directors and people at these big events to give me an event and an experience that's going to change my life, because God forbid you don't. I need it. I need my life to change right now. That's why I'm signed up for these big events. That's why I'm signed up for these specific branded events. I need this event to change my life. I need it to make me worthy. I need it to make me who I am. I need it to get me through this hard time. I've got to have it. That's not fair. And the biggest person that's not fair to is you. Because you're just going to show up with 3,000 other people and do a race. It's the journey, it's the training, it's the process that molds you into who you are and who you can become. You become fitter, you become healthier, you become, more motivated. You set a better example for your kids. Like these are and your friends. You're being a good example. You're testing your boundaries. You're overcoming fears. You're doing whatever. Like you do those in training, right? The day that you get out to perform in any race is just an opportunity to express it. And it's like 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, 7 times a year out of the other 350 days where you just show up and still try to get better. So you've got to ask yourself, and I know that's tough, and it's probably like the least helpful, picture for some people because they want it to be, this big life-changing event, but you're responsible for changing your life. You're responsible for making these changes, and you do that in training. If you're listening to this podcast, you do it right now. A race is not going to define you, and it's not going to change you. It's just going to show you how far you come. And just because that opportunity may have gotten moved or mismanaged or taken away totally doesn't take away who you are and who you become. Like I think we forget that.
So in my own case, I'm just listening to you, and I totally agree. But I'd like to just say that I've been, I've been a victim of that personally, where I'll put so much emphasis historically on a race that I can honestly say that, like thinking back to my first one and how when I decided to train and do my first Ironman, I honestly put way too much stock in that race. Like in reflection, based, kind of just based on what you're saying there and thinking about it, because there's this weird thing in my mind, right, as I think about finishing an Ironman, and when I finish it, like I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
done. Like that is going to be the solution for the rest of my life or something. It's like this delusional perspective of once you cross that finish line, it's like, wow, you can just take that deep breath. And I think that's the point, right? Is that you put so much emphasis on the race. There's that 80-20 rule where
Mm-hmm.
whatever, it applies to a lot of different things. And I think a lot of us, while we should be putting 80% of the focus on training and everything else, and then maybe 20% of the race, I think I've tended to reverse that, where I put 80% of my feelings into the race result. And it has gone, it has been an absolute challenge in that regard, because very rarely do your results lead up to these fictitious expectations, where you have this goal in mind to finish the race, and you're like, wow, once I get this done, I'm going to be able to go tackle everything in life, and it's all going to be easier now, because of that relief. Or like it's the same with graduation. You go through, you study and work your butt off to get to graduation day, and then it's like, that's when it starts. It's like, just because you have a diploma doesn't mean things are going to be smooth sailing from here on out or whatever. You can't assume that reaching a goal is going to be that big of a life changer. Well, I think it changed my life in some ways. It really opened the doors for a lot of opportunity, but it is a perspective, man, and it's been a hard one for me to grasp, and we're talking about it, and it makes sense intellectually when we discuss it like this, but I think it's very hard to actually accept it and look at things like that. Like if you were same kind of thing, as a senior, not getting to play in March Madness, if you've got a big race that you feel like I'm gonna flip the switch and I'm gonna train for this race, and it's gonna be the thing for me. And then all of a sudden it gets canceled. You're like, whoa. And then you do have to step back and really think about why you're doing this in the first place. And as a coach and as I talk to athletes in training peaks and things like that, I'm always trying to remind them that it's not about a couple laps in the pool that you swam at PR rates of hundreds. It's these are long swims, and how do you feel afterwards, and how is that progressing, and how is it helping you feel better in general, and approach life in a different way? Because you're right, it's like every day presents a new opportunity, and I think and a new challenge. And I think one of the other things is it is a it is a new challenge, a race, but it's also an opportunity to have fun. I think that when I'm racing my best or in my best frame of mind even, I show I train my butt off, and then I feel like, all right, that feels good. I feel like I'm good. And when I can show up at these races and look at them as an opportunity to have a good time, like you always talk about, it's a glorified training day with aid stations and support and people cheering for you and all this kind of stuff. That really is, to me, the right way to look at it, because it is really a fun opportunity when you come out of that water and people are screaming and yelling for you and really caring about you. You're just some kind of, I'm just sort of like this middle of the road aging triathlete, and there's people screaming for me. It's pretty damn cool if you think about it. It's like being on your stage at your own little March Madness, and you get the opportunity. So when I'm in a good state of mind, it's when I'm racing and enjoying the ceremony, or whatever you want to call it. But there's plenty of opportunities for them. They just keep coming, right?
Yeah,
So there's,
if races did as much for us mentally and emotionally as we hope they do, then no one would train for them.
mm,
You would just show up to the race and do it. It'd be like, look at this, like I'm getting it all today. It's so good. No, because what you find along the way is that it relieves stress. It makes me feel better. It allows me to stay present. It allows me to work out my emotions. It allows me to be healthy. It allows me to deal with life. It allows me to be a better version of myself. That's called training. That's called day to day. That's not called race day. Race day is just a day, one day. Because if you've raced long enough, you know the fact that even though it's called a race, you're not guaranteed your best day. You're far from it. You're not guaranteed your best day. And the fact, the mentality or the approach of, well, if the race isn't happening or might not happening, and I'm going to live in all these things that haven't officially happened yet, then what you're saying is, what I'm willing to do is I'm willing to give up the time that I'm taking for myself to better myself, because I'm not going to be able to show up to this event that I paid $700 for and get my medal and walk away. No, you keep working hard because you like to work hard. Because what if I told you that, well, the race is canceled, and you know if or it's not canceled, but if you don't go, you're going to lose all of your fitness, you're going to lose the person you become, you're going to be, that's the best way to put it. Like, you train for 8 months for a race, and then I tell you, if you don't go to this race, okay, then everything you've done has been erased. Everything's gone. All your training, all
oh,
your fitness, everything. No, you like, well, that's no, or if you had to choose between the race or the training and what it's done for you, most people would choose the training. Like, this is like, it makes you into who you are. And just because an opportunity removes itself, because that's the thing, is that opportunities just change. And so instead of having a race, you now have an opportunity to adjust, if that's even the case. like to adjust your approach, to adjust how you're doing, and you need people to help you with that. But you just have to remember like why you're doing it. Like the races are just like they're just checkpoints along the way. Like that's it. It's not none of it, none of them ever are going to be your destination. They're just check marks along the way. And I think you just have to remember that the hard work that you do, the effort that you put in, it's still all going to be there. And in fact, the next time you get to one of these checkpoints, no matter when it is, if it's tomorrow or if it's in, 1 week or 1 month or 1 year, you're going to be better off if you keep working, because you have to keep working at things to make them into what you want to make them into. And so I think it's a healthy discussion. And I just do. I want people to like dig deep onto if they are worrying, like, like no one would ever say, hey, if you're really stressed out and you got a lot of anxiety, you know what you should do? Definitely not exercise. Like you should stop exercising totally. You should just sit there and you should probably scroll through Facebook and you should probably scroll through, Twitter and internet. If you want to really minimize any anxiety and fear and stress, you should do those things and stop running and stop riding your bike and stop doing these things because those things are terrible. No, we need those things now more than ever. Get outside, go for a walk, go for a run, like feel good about yourself, be healthy. Like these are the things that we should value the most. And I hate it that we only have these discussions when something like this happens or when circumstances arise that really put you in a corner to have these difficult conversations. But have them with yourself, have them with your friends, have them with your family. Like we love to challenge ourselves because we love the challenge. And most people that I know would probably challenge themselves no matter what in some way, or like, I'm just going to keep training because I love to train. I love to better myself. The race might move, that might cause, some logistical and scheduling complex, and the initial disappointment is going to be there for sure. And I 100% get that. But outside of that, dude, just tell me where to show up next. Like, tell
Yeah.
me, I'll be ready. Like, I'll be even more ready. And obviously, there's things you can do to change up your training and prevent yourself from peaking at a time where it doesn't really matter and doing things else. But those are conversations for a different day, man. Those is like just have fun and get out there and work at yourself and work at what you're doing and it's just there is no dead end. There is no dead end.
There's always a lot of people that'll question exercise, and there's I have a lot of friends that are, they just don't exercise or whatever, and what's the point? You're all gonna, I've seen people like, get sick or whatever that run marathon or whatever, and I'm always like, well, isn't the point to feel good along the journey? It's like we have this opportunity, and it is, you're talking about just ultimately being in the moment and being in the day, and today is a new day, and I think that's important to think about it that way. We can all sit back and watch news and be just like bummed out or whatever, but like, we have no control over anything, and other than what we do, right? Like the big picture I'm talking about. Like we can't control what's going on. It's a landslide that's sort of out of control in a lot of ways, but we can control whether it's, we go out and go for a run or do something that's going to make us feel good right now and keep our, spirits as high as possible, and just approach things like with positivity. And I think that's like all we got. A lot of times it's like, why not? Why not do what we can today to feel good about it instead of just getting, um, kind of trapped in like this, oh man, hopelessness. Let's have hope and go forward, right? Um, I don't
I
know. I like
mean,
every time I go into those kind of things, I start thinking like super deep, and I know it's not even the time or discussion, but I'm just trying to, I you know, my, I have a thing like, right, and people joke about it, and like our buddy Sam, he was struggling with an IT band issue, and my response was just, yeah, just don't think about it, man, you know, and that's kind of like what I say a lot of times, because I think that, I really believe the mind is like super powerful in that regard, and you know, I get through a lot of these races or training sessions, and I think all of us do with our mind. And I think that we sort of become what we think about all the time. So it's like, let it go. and just find something new. Some more new to find your energy. It's like it's so easy. You can just see people starting to text you all the time. Do you see the latest? Do you see the latest? Do you see the latest or whatever? And then you kind of start going down that rabbit hole. But, you know, you're free to think and do what you want right now.
Yep.
So that's important. And just because like you said, I mean, the focus of this has been about one race, or if something happens to a race, well, it is what it is. Like it's the hardest thing, right? To look at something that seems, devastating or so negative and look for opportunity, but that's what successful people do. Like what, like you did, oh, you got to cancel this race, but oh man, it gives me opportunity to be with my family. It's like a better outcome.
It is. It's a totally better outcome. Like,
So,
is
but
it?
how do you, it's hard to do that. As I was looking at like, hey, what can we do to make this a good situation?
Well,
Um,
I think you have to look at the pre and the post. Like, yeah. So if I was totally fixated on just this 50 miler, well, then nothing before and nothing after really mattered. But then as soon as the race was over, and the race, the excitement clears, which is basically happens like, an hour later, then you're left feeling or thinking, all right, well, I feel guilty for being here, because that race is over. I can no longer hide myself and my feelings and my emotions inside the race. Now I have to go back to the real world. I think that's how a lot of people approach racing, is that they get to hide themselves away. And so I would have finished this race and been like, crap, now I have to like go home. I'll be super sore. I'll be tired. I got to spend, quality time with Allie, and then I'm going to leave him again for 6 days, and then I'll feel bad for that. So it's like, okay, what's worse? Like, do I want to feel guilty, or do I want to feel like I'm being irresponsible, or do I want to make a better decision? Because like where I land on like the fitness expression scale in terms of like participating and trying to perform in a race, they are way down on my list of daily priorities. And I think that's probably helpful. And again, I haven't always been this way, especially when I was single. I was like the worst. Um, but being married and having Hayden, it's like, well, okay, wait a minute. Where am I'm investing in myself when I go out and run, when I go out and train. Like that's what leaves me happy and fulfilled, is when I wake up and I do what I know I'm supposed to do, and I do to the best of my abilities. Um, and so, I think that for me, it's like, hey, I need to make the best decision for me as a human and as a father and a husband first, not Robbie the trail runner or Robbie the triathlete or Robbie the whatever. And it makes it easy to triage those questions and troubleshoot circumstances and changes quickly, because my first thought isn't to like weigh who's more important, because it's my job in my business is being a dad and being a husband. That's my number one priority. Being a triathlete and being a trail runner, those are like hobbies that like I do. They're not things that are going to define me as a person. And so it makes those decisions super easy. And on the flip side, it complements my ability to do the things I want to do when I go out and run, because I don't feel any stress, right? So by making this tough decision, I may not have a performance that I would have wanted to have later, but I feel like I'm going to be able to perform better, because I'm not going to have those other outs at this event in Saturday, 2 days from now, because I'm not going to have those. I'm going to feel supported, not just from Allie and Hayden, but from myself as a father and a husband. And I think we forget that we're like we wear multiple hats, and I need to feel like I'm the father and husband me, which is the most important part of me, is supporting and feeling supported in what I do as a trail runner, as a coach, or as this normal human being. And so if you can connect all those pieces and wear all those hats at the same time, they all complement each other, then that's when you really get to get out and have fun and do things. Because you can race freely. You don't have to race with this weight on your shoulders, or what I think a lot of people do is like, oh, I dread when this race is over, because it's like, up, back to reality.
yep,
And
at
so I think,
100%, man.
yeah, so I think it's about how you go into it, and you have to approach it that way.
I love how when you say race freely, because to me it's sort of like a lot of times throughout training, I feel like neglect kind of builds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we and I think a lot of it is sort of reconciling our neglect throughout the process, right? So you're like, well, you know, the races I got coming up, I don't need to do that kind of stuff, or I don't need to do this, or I can ignore my friends or my family a little bit because this race is so important. But if you do that, racing freely is so much harder, right? I mean, you have to Jekyll and Hyde yourself kind of as a person, and I think a lot of us I think, you know, human beings are pretty good at that, compartmentalizing different things, but that it never pans out in the end. You know what I mean? Like I'm the king of that. Well, I'll just do that yard work or do this or whatever it is later, but it's always there. It just doesn't go away until you do the things that you have to do, and it's neglecting things along the way. And I'm sure that once your situation arose, you're like, oh, then you might have started feeling it, and you reconciled it immediately by changing the race, and that probably gave you much more opportunity to race free. You know, it's not like you had to go down there and I think that's a lot of, uh, I don't know. You tell me. Like trail racing has a little bit less of a intensity than, you know, doing an Ironman, in the sense of like, it's a freer sport maybe, and I think that you found some freedom in running in the trails, and I think there's just that nature element too. It's like you've kind of taken, you know, a little bit chiller approach to things, and I think that in general is good, you know.
Hey, life. Anything you do to make your own life better and less stressful is a bonus, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, does it feel less stressful to end the podcast right now?
It does, dude. Let's end it.
Let's end it right here. One of our shorter ones.
One of our shorter, but hey, I feel like we packed a punch today.
Yeah,
Quality
a lot of
today over
food for
quantity in the
thought.
time. Hey, we appreciate you tuning in as always. Keep your chin up. Go have
Yeah.
fun. Do what you want to do. Wash your hands. Be happy. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, reach out to Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to me directly, C26coach@gmail.com. And if you want more info on all the things we do with our coaching camps and community, you can head over to our website, C26triathlon.com.
That sounds good, man. I'm gonna head down to the lobby and do some fist bumping.
All right, dude. I'll be in touch.
All right, man. Thanks
All
a
right,
lot. I'll see you soon.
see you, dude.